Your mother never amounted to anything, Aunt Gloria told my children, her voice dripping with the particular venom she'd been perfecting for 3 decades, as she served them cookies in the living room of her charming Victorian home on Maple Street. Don't be like her. She had every opportunity and wasted them all on silly dreams. My son Marcus, 11 years old, and my daughter Layla, 9, came home that afternoon with red eyes and trembling lips, asking me why Aunt Gloria said I was a failure. I held them close, wiping their tears, promising that some people say things they don't understand. Then I walked to my home office, closed the door, and called my property manager. The tenant at 4521 Maple Street? Gloria Henderson? Her lease isn't being renewed. She has 60 days to vacate my property. Let me tell you how I became my aunt's landlord without her ever knowing. Gloria Henderson was my mother's older sister and the family's self-appointed judge of worthiness. She'd married well, a corporate attorney named Franklin who'd worked himself into an early grave, leaving her with enough insurance money to maintain appearances while never actually building anything herself. She lived in a beautiful Victorian house in the historic district of Savannah, hosted elaborate dinner parties, and dispensed opinions about everyone else's choices with the confidence of someone who'd never had to make difficult ones. I'd been her favorite target since childhood. My mother, Gloria's younger sister, had married for love rather than money, choosing my father despite his modest income as a high school music teacher. Gloria never forgave her for this breach of strategic matrimony. When my parents died in a car accident when I was 17, Gloria's generosity in taking me in came with a price. Constant reminders that I was a charity case, a burden, proof of what happened when women chose romance over practicality. Your mother could have had anyone, Gloria would say. Instead, she picked a man who couldn't provide. Look where it got her. I left her house the day I turned 18, worked my way through community college, and built a life she never bothered to understand. My silly dreams started with a camera. My father had given it to me for my 15th birthday. I used DSLR that became my escape from everything painful in my life. I photographed anything and everything. Street scenes, portraits, abandoned buildings, the play of light through Spanish moss in Savannah's squares. Gloria called it a hobby for people who can't do anything useful. I called it my future. After leaving her house, I worked as a server, a retail clerk, a house cleaner. Anything that paid rent while I built a photography portfolio. I shot weddings for free to gain experience. I assisted established photographers for minimal pay to learn their techniques. I entered competitions, built a website, slowly developed a style that people began to recognize. By 25, I was booking enough paid work to quit my day jobs. By 30, I had a studio and a waiting list. By 35, I'd been featured in national publications and shot campaigns for brands Gloria would have recognized if she'd ever paid attention to anything I did. But I never told her. Never invited her to shows, never mentioned clients, never corrected her assumptions about my struggling artist life. Why would I? She'd made up her mind about me before I was old enough to prove her wrong. Changing her opinion wasn't worth my energy. What I did instead was build, quietly, strategically, and with a long memory. The real estate investments started almost by accident. A client couldn't pay for her wedding photography in cash, so she offered a partnership stake in a property she was renovating instead. I accepted, learned the basics of real estate investment, and discovered I had a talent for identifying undervalued properties in neighborhoods about to appreciate. Over 15 years, I acquired 17 properties across Savannah. Historic homes, mostly, buildings with good bones that needed renovation and management. I worked with local contractors, hired a property management company, and built a portfolio that generated passive income exceeding my photography earnings. The Victorian at 4521, Maple Street came on the market 8 years ago. I recognized it immediately, Gloria's house. The house where she'd hosted dinner parties while criticizing my mother's choices. The house where she'd made me feel worthless for 3 years of my teenage life. The house she'd always spoken of as proof of her superior life decisions. What Gloria didn't know, what almost no one knew, was that Franklin's insurance money had run out years ago. She'd been living on credit, refinancing the house repeatedly, until the debt exceeded the equity and the bank foreclosed. The auction was private. I bought it through an LLC with no connection to my name. Then I offered Gloria a lease at below-market rent, handled through my property management company. She had no idea she'd become my tenant. She thought some anonymous investor had purchased the house and generously allowed her to stay. For 8 years, I collected rent from the woman who called me a failure. Every month, her check funded my children's education savings while she continued to look down on me at family gatherings. It was petty, perhaps, but it was also deeply satisfying. I might have maintained the arrangement forever if she hadn't involved my children. Marcus and Layla knew their great-aunt Gloria as the elderly relative they visited occasionally at family gatherings. I'd kept them away from her as much as possible, but my cousin Deborah, Gloria's daughter, had insisted on a family connection visit while I was away on a photography assignment. Just a few hours, Deborah had assured me. Mom wants to see the kids. She's mellowed with age. She hadn't mellowed. She'd just been waiting for an audience. The children told me everything that evening. How Gloria had served them cookies while explaining that their mother had wasted her potential on taking pictures. How she described my teenage years as a cautionary tale, the girl who'd rejected good advice and ended up struggling. How she'd urged them to choose stable careers, not creative fantasies like their mother. She said you never amounted to anything, Layla whispered. Mom, what does that mean? It means Aunt Gloria doesn't know what she's talking about. But she sounded so sure. She said Grandma made bad choices and you made the same ones. I looked at my children, beautiful, sensitive, confused, and felt something shift inside me. For 30 years, I'd tolerated Gloria's contempt because fighting seemed pointless. She was family, she was old, she was set in her ways. But she'd brought my children into it. She'd tried to make them ashamed of me. That crossed a line. The call to my property manager was brief. The tenant at 4521 Maple. Gloria Henderson. Her lease expires in 2 months. We won't be renewing. Any particular reason? She's been reliable with payments. Personal decision. Give her the standard 60-day notice. Everything by the book. Understood. Should I mention the property owner's name? Not yet. Just the standard notice. I hung up and began planning what would happen next. The family gathering was scheduled for the following month. A birthday dinner for Deborah at Gloria's house. Or rather, at my house that Gloria lived in. I attended with the children, behaving normally, watching Gloria hold court in her Victorian parlor as if she owned the place. She greeted my kids with saccharine sweetness, as if she hadn't tried to poison them against me weeks earlier. How are you, darlings? Doing well in school. Remember what Auntie Gloria told you. Work hard and make smart choices. Marcus glanced at me. I gave him a small nod. He said nothing. Dinner proceeded typically. Gloria complained about the economy, praised Deborah's son for his law school acceptance, and managed 3 subtle digs at my profession before dessert. Photography is fine as a hobby, she announced to the table. But young people today need real careers. Stable careers. Not chasing dreams that don't pay bills. My bills are paid, I said quietly. Of course, dear. I'm sure you get by. But getting by isn't succeeding, is it? I smiled. I suppose it depends on how you define success. Success is security. A home you own. A future you can count on. She gestured at her surroundings. Something permanent. About that. I set down my dessert fork. I heard this house is changing ownership. Isn't the new owner declining to renew the lease? Gloria's face went pale. How did you know about that? Small town. Word travels. It's a misunderstanding. I'm sure the management company made an error. I've been a perfect tenant for 8 years. Maybe the owner has other plans for the property. What plans? Who is this owner? Nobody at the management company will tell me anything. Her voice was rising, panic edging in. I've lived here for 40 years. I raised Deborah here. They can't just evict me. They're not evicting you. They're declining to renew your lease. It's different. It's the same thing. I'll have nowhere to go. The room had gone silent. Every relative was watching this exchange, sensing something beneath the surface they didn't quite understand. Deborah looked distressed. My children watched with wide eyes. Gloria, I said calmly, do you remember what you told my children last month? She blinked. What? When they visited. You told them their mother never amounted to anything. You said I was the family failure. You told them not to be like me. I was giving them practical advice. You were poisoning them against their mother. In my house. The silence somehow deepened. Your house. Gloria's voice was barely a whisper. I reached into my purse and withdrew a folder. Inside was the deed to 4521 Maple Street, listing the owner as Brennan Properties, LLC. Behind that, the LLC registration, showing me as sole proprietor. I bought this house 8 years ago, Gloria. At auction. After you defaulted on your mortgage because Franklin's insurance money ran out and you'd been living on credit for years. I slid the folder across the table to her. I've been your landlord this entire time. Every rent check you wrote went into my account. Her face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and horror. That's not possible. You take pictures. You can't afford. I own 17 properties in Savannah. My photography business has been featured in publications you've probably read without realizing it. Last year, I earned more than Franklin made in his best year. I leaned forward. You've spent 30 years calling me a failure, Gloria. You did it at every family gathering, every holiday, every chance you got. I ignored it because changing your mind wasn't worth my time. But you involved my children. You tried to make them ashamed of me. I was helping them. You were hurting them. And you were doing it in a house I own, while paying me rent, completely unaware that the family failure was the only reason you still had a roof over your head. Gloria started crying. Real tears, not performative ones. The tears of someone whose entire self-image had just collapsed. For decades, she'd positioned herself as the successful sister, the wise aunt, the one who'd made the right choices. Now she was sitting in a house she didn't own, facing eviction by the niece she'd spent years dismissing. "What do you want?" she finally asked. "An apology? Money. I want you to understand something." I stood, gathering my children. Success isn't about looking down on others. It's not about performing superiority or tearing down people who make different choices. Real success is building something, quietly, patiently, without needing everyone to know about it. I looked at my kids. I want Marcus and Layla to see that their mother isn't a failure. I want them to know that the woman who called me worthless has been living in my house, supported by my success, for 8 years without realizing it. "So you're evicting me to prove a point?" "No. I'm declining to renew your lease because I don't want to be your landlord anymore. The relationship doesn't serve either of us." I walked toward the door, then paused. "You have 60 days. That's more than the legal minimum. I suggest you use them to find somewhere suitable." "Where am I supposed to go?" "I don't know, Gloria. Maybe ask someone successful for advice." We left her sitting in my living room, surrounded by furniture that would need to be moved, in a house that had never really been hers. The aftermath was complicated. Deborah was furious with me at first. Then she learned the full history, the decades of cruelty I'd absorbed, the comments about her own mother being dismissed as equally foolish for loving my father. She'd grown up hearing Gloria's poison too. She'd just never been the primary target. Gloria found a small apartment across town. Smaller, less prestigious, but within her actual means. The humiliation seemed to genuinely change her, or maybe just silence her. At family gatherings now, she says nothing about anyone's choices, just sits quietly with her tea and her diminished certainty. My children learned a lesson more valuable than anything school could teach. That the people who speak loudest about success are often the ones who understand it least, and that the quietest people in the room might be holding all the cards. Last month, Marcus asked me about that night. "Mom, do you feel bad?" "About what happened to Aunt Gloria?" I considered the question carefully. "I feel satisfied that she finally saw the truth. I feel glad that you and Layla know your mother isn't a failure." "But bad?" "No, not really." "Why not?" "Because I gave her 8 years of subsidized rent while she insulted me at every opportunity. I gave her more grace than she ever gave me. When she attacked you and your sister, the grace ended." "So there's a limit?" "There's always a limit, sweetheart. Kindness doesn't mean being a doormat. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do, for yourself and everyone else, is show people the consequences of their choices." He thought about this. "I'm glad you're our mom," he finally said. "The successful one." I hugged him tight, in our beautiful home, surrounded by evidence of dreams that Gloria said would never amount to anything. They amounted to everything.